Hi everyone, it's Jim from Radio Wasteland Records, and this video is going to be a little bit different than the videos that you normally see us produce here at the store. This one's going to be more along the lines of a vinyl community video that you'd see here on YouTube within the VC. And this video is meant to pay tribute and to celebrate the life of a good friend of ours, Bill Young. Bill passed away earlier this week, and it hit a lot of folks very hard because Bill was a founding member of the Michigan Record Club. It's a big group on Facebook, as well as his own channel here on YouTube, the Michigan Record Club. Now, Bill's been battling cancer for quite some time, and toward the end of his battles, there was a thread started within the vinyl community for 5 psych albums for Bill Young. I was thinking about doing it, and I could never quite get myself around to it because the situation was getting a little bit too close to home. But and when we got the news that Bill passed, I thought this is the time to do it because Steve Carlson started another thread with a video that he had done, 5 albums celebrating Bill Young. So I've got 5 albums here that are meant to celebrate this very kind and very great man and a fantastic record collector to boot. But first, a little side note for those of you who knew Bill and those of you who are familiar with our store. Wanted to share a couple of stories about what Bill meant, not only to me, but to our store in general. Back in late 2016, my life was undergoing a little bit of a seismic shift. Bill's really at the same time too, albeit his a little bit more serious than mine ended up being. I was at a job that was ending for me, and as a 50-something dude with a very, very limited skill set, I was really kind of questioning what to do and where to go next with things. My family talked me into, and with a little help from my brain talking me into it as well, we decided to open up a record store. But we would be starting a small business from scratch at that point. So I had the records, I could get more records, but we really didn't have a location. We didn't have the means, the infrastructure, so to speak, to get it started. So in that very short time span between just around Thanksgiving of 2016 till we opened in January, we very hastily put together a business plan, found a location, but we were still lacking this kind of infrastructure on where and how to display the records. Now, ultimately, we would have liked to have some shelves built specifically for this, but we didn't have the time and or monetary resources to get that done before we had planned to open in January. And this is where Bill comes into our lives. My wife had seen an ad on Craigslist advertising some record racks, some display racks. Now, Bill had bought these from a record store that closed in Bay City, a secondhand used record store in Bay City a few years prior. He got all the shelves and shelving units and all the inventory. Now, while he was able to move the inventory through his record dealing business, he put the shelves in his garage. Ultimately, Bill's dream was to open up a record store in Midland of his very own. But sadly, right around that time is where he began his battles with the dreaded cancer. So the record shelves themselves kind of got put to the side. We step into the picture, see that Craigslist ad, and when I went to actually look at the shelves for the first time, Bill's wife Bridget had to let me into their garage to check them out as Bill was in the hospital. Bill got out of the hospital at that point in time. We talked a little bit about the record racks, about starting up a record store, and that's when he shared with me his dream of doing it. He then said, if you have the means, the ability, and the drive to get this done, then we struck a very good deal on the record racks. And that was the beginning of a great, great friendship between Bill and I. And it's something that has lasted for the entire 5.5 years that we've had the store. Bill has been a big fixture here, stopping in really at least once a week. He would often say that he was living vicariously through me running the record store and would come in on days that we would get deliveries just to open up the shipments of new vinyl. He would open them up and go through them and help me catalog them. From time to time, when we would get big collections, he would come by and we would look through them together to see if there were any gems lurking throughout. And so this was a great friendship that I was able to share with Bill. And I'm lucky to say that I have had that opportunity to share that friendship with Bill for all of these years. And for those reasons, that's why I say that Bill has been a big, big part of this store. I mean, the foundations of our physical being came from Bill's desire to begin a record store in Midland. And while he didn't have the chance to actually do that himself, he was, again, here to share this with us. So, Bill, I thank you very, very much for that. And I know I've said that 1,000 times to him before, but as I put up a post earlier, I never felt like I could have said it enough. So with that, I'm going to go on to 5 albums to celebrate the life of Bill Young, president of the Michigan Record Club, record collector extraordinaire himself, and just an all-around righteous dude and great guy in his own right. Now, these 5 records are not necessarily all psych records, and that was Bill's big wheelhouse, but he was a big fan of lots and lots of music. I can attest to that because we would do hunts for records. He would look through the stuff we've got. He would look at pre-orders. So it ranged for him for everything from hard rock to the psychedelic rock to jazz. He was a big fan of some earlier jazz like Miles Davis and the such, and just a lot of heavy metal stuff as well. But one of Bill's big passions, along with the psych, was Michigan rock. And that's something that he and I shared and talked about a great deal. And so as Bill was preparing for a move which he ultimately, unfortunately, was not able to make, he was getting ready to move south to warmer climates away from Michigan, he pared down his record collection a little bit. And one of the records that he wanted to make sure that I got a hold of at this time was this one called Michigan Brand Nuggets. Now, this is an unknown pressing year. It's a various artist album, and it is an unofficial release, meaning that something like the Michigan Rocks albums, which are an official release, which was licensed, these were just kind of cobbled together. On Discogs, this doesn't have a year attached to it, but I was able to find some things that allude to it being a 1982 album. This has been repressed in the mid-2000s as well, another unofficial release, as well as a compact disc, but the originals were limited to about 1,000 copies, and this one is numbered as number 158. So it's a double LP, and it's got nothing but great Michigan artists. Everybody from the Woolies to several from Seeger, the Rationals are in there, MC5, the Underdogs, Terry Knight in the pack, Question Mark and the Mysterians, of course, you've got to have them in there as well. And the one oddity, though, is that this album pictures, well, it looks like Iggy Pop on the front, and there's not a single Iggy Pop or Stooges cut on this entire album. Obviously an oversight as they were putting it together. But Bill had this in his collection for years, and it was a big one. And in one of our many, many trades and deals back and forth that we've done over the years, as he was kind of trying to liquidate some of his collection prior to his planned move, this is one of the ones that he said he wanted to make sure that I got a hold of and was able to buy that off of him. Traded, I think, is what we did on this too. So very happy to have this double LP in the collection. Another one, and this one came from Bill again, and this was early on after we'd opened the store. This is URSA Major, and this is one of the later projects, not really a solo, it's a band, from Dick Wagner. Dick Wagner, of course, began with Dick Wagner and the Frost. Oh, the Bossmen, he was in the Bossmen as well, and a little bit later, the Hollywood Vampires. But URSA Major was one of his side projects, and this is from 1972. Shortly after we opened the store, and Bill and I again had one of our conversations about Michigan rock and roll, he said to me that you've got to have this one in your collection. It's great hard rock from Dick Wagner and in the style of the Frost, but a little bit of blues, a little bit of psych from being in the early 70s. But URSA Major, another very important addition to my collection. And that's the way Bill was. If he knew that you liked a certain kind of music, he'd say, you've got to have this in your collection. This is an important part of that. And I'm happy to have that one in there. So we got a twofer next. And this is a gentleman by the name of Harvey Mandel. He was a guitarist who was born in Detroit, so we're going to make that a Michigan tie-in here as well. But this is one of his solo albums, his first actually. It's Cristo Redentor. Now, Harvey Mandel, as a guitarist, had lots and lots of activity he would go through. He played ultimately with Canned Heat for some time, but he actually auditioned for the Rolling Stones, and his guitar work can be heard on a couple of Stones cuts throughout. But his solo stuff is what's very cool. This is psychedelic, but it's also very, very blues-oriented. So this one, Cristo Reductor, was released in 1968. And this is included in this list celebrating Bill because when I first found this album, listened to it, and I thought, this is great. I found the Michigan connection. This is going to go in the personal collection. It was also on one of the days that Bill had stopped by, and he saw that in the pile, instantly recognized it, and said, I need a copy of that. And so we talked, and Bill got that copy. Luckily, I was able to find another one down the line to add back to my personal collection, but that's why that's included, because Bill recognized this right off. He knew what kind of music it was. He knew it was great, great stuff, and that was an important addition to his collection, and thus is an important addition to mine. The twofer part is just another solo one from Harvey Mandel called The Snake, and I believe Bill had that in his collection as well, so that's a couple of great ones. Now, on to a grail. This is not psych, but it is great, great Michigan rock and roll. And as a record store owner and as a record collector, whenever you see a copy of Bob Seger's back in '72, you need to pick it up because that's a very, very sought after album. This particular copy that I've got came from Bill again, and this was one of our many trades. And it's cool for me because it is a white label promo, and I'm kind of a collector, side note, of picking up white label promo copies of stuff when I have that ability. But this is a big, important album. You don't see a lot of Seger stuff because, quite frankly, they're still trying to work on getting a lot of his earlier things into the reissue front. And until that happens, albums like this are going to be very sought after and very coveted by collectors, especially of Michigan stuff. Most notable on this is the fact that there is the studio version of Turn the Page. Now, most everybody is familiar with the live version appearing on Live Bullet, and that's the one that I remember always hearing on the radio, and you never really did hear the studio version, but this album is where that one originated. So, again, a very important album. Bill, I think, had several of these at different points in time, kept his best one. We worked a deal to trade for the promo copy because he knew that I liked the promo stuff as well as I needed this copy in my personal collection. So back in '72, another one very important. And finally, on these 5 records to celebrate Bill Young, we've got one from The Third Power. And I wanted to end on this because this is a very important album, not only to Michigan rock and roll history, but one that was very, very important to Bill. And that is because of this gentleman up here, Jem Targle from The Third Power. By the way, I want to mention that The Third Power also featured Drew Abbott, who went on to play with Bob Seger, the Silver Bullet Band. But Jem Targle is a big part of this, and he passed away, unfortunately, about a year ago. But he was a very, very nice gentleman. I had a conversation with him online for an interview we did for a previous video. But Bill had also struck up a friendship with Jem Targle through the Michigan Record Club. Jem was a member of that Facebook page. He and Bill began talking. They struck up, as anyone who will tell you, once you strike up a conversation with Bill, you instantly recognize this man's worth and just what a great guy he is. So Jem and Bill had formed this friendship online through the record club, and they maintained that up until Jem's death last year. But in that time, Bill always spoke very highly of him in their interactions through the Facebook page. But Jem sent a copy of his solo album. Lucky Guy was the name of that solo album. He sent Bill an autographed copy of that album based on their discussions back and forth. And I can tell you, Bill loved that. He loved Jem for doing that. And that was a big, big part of his collection. He was so proud of having that. And he was so proud to have been able to call Jem a friend online. So not to get too melodramatic, but I can just imagine Jem Targle and Bill Young and the conversations they're having right now about music, about Michigan music, about record collections. And that just really, really warms my heart. So those are 5 important albums that I would want to get across to help celebrate the life and legacy of Bill Young. Again, a very, very important man, not only to me personally. He was a great friend, but he was a big, big champion, not just of our store, but of all record stores. Several of them here in the mid-Michigan area. Bill would always speak very highly of the folks that own them and run them. He would do whatever he could to help them out and spread the word of vinyl and the love of vinyl to so many people. And that was the basis of the Michigan Record Club, and that was truly the basis of Bill's life. Now, we're praying for his family, his wife Bridget, and his kids, that they're going to get through this time, and I know they will, because the memory of Bill Young will live on in each and every one of us whenever we spin a record that we know meant so much to him and so much to all of us. So again, I don't want to be overly dramatic about this, but thank you guys very much for entertaining this. And thank you, Bill, and thank you, Bridget, for all of the spins that we've had throughout our lives. And until we meet again, brother, thank you.